Da, 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 da. I love this show, X-Men 97. We're in a third episode. Now, the first two episodes that they premiered last week, it seems like they were front-loading a lot of the social commentary, especially with the Trial of Magneto episode, where they're, really trying to dig into mutants as a metaphor for oppressed peoples. But now that they got that out of the way with the first two episodes, X-Men sometimes is also just about really fun, wacky comic book shenanigans and hijinks and all that stuff. And this episode decides to pull like a whole clone storyline. So I know in the comics they did like a whole storyline where the Jean Grey that had been palling around for a while was actually like a clone of Jean Grey, and then she ends up taking a villainous turn and being called the Goblin Queen, and then she takes the name Madeline Pryor. And this episode tries to condense that storyline into one 30-minute episode. So, at the end of last episode, Scott and Jean have just had their baby Nathan, and then a Jean Grey shows up on their doorstep, and they're like, what's going on? And then, Beast figures out, wait, this Jean is the real Jean. The Jean that's been with us for a while is a clone, but the real Jean doesn't seem to have access to all of her memories, and the clone Jean is just like, but no, I've been here the whole time. And it reminded me a lot, and I know it predates, this storyline predates the Spider-Man animated series, but the way it played out reminded me of the storyline in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon when Mary Jane came back, but then we found out that she was a clone of Mary Jane with water powers that had been created for Hydro Man. And I think the Spider-Man one, I think they did that because they were doing the whole Mary Jane dies instead of Gwen Stacy, but she couldn't die because it was a 90s Fox Kids cartoon. So instead she just got thrown into a portal that went to another dimension, and then Spider-Man never saw her again. But yeah, it felt like that, because here we have the redheaded love interest of the main character who turns out to have been a clone for months. I think it's that the kid, Nathan, Scott and Jean's kid, I'm pretty sure that it was in fact Madeline Pryor, the Jean clone, who gave birth to Nathan. But once they deal with the whole thing, it's just Jean's kid. They don't really address that. Madeline's actually the mother there. But they also bring back Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister is behind the whole cloning of Jean Grey, and he's using her to control. And they do some really cool animation with this episode, because Mr. Sinister, once he's got mind control over Jean Grey, or Madeline Pryor, I should say, because he cloned her, so he has control over her atoms. But she's also got all of the powers of Jean Grey and probably residual Phoenix Force energy or whatnot. And she does a lot of really cool stuff. It kind of goes into this whole nightmarish thing where she basically pulls the X-Men down into a hell dimension where they have to fight monsters and stuff like that. And it's just a lot of action, and it's a lot of fun. There's not a lot of social commentary to it. It's just a fun comic book story. Another thing that they're doing, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Cable show up in the original X-Men cartoon? Because Cable is Nathan Summers, right? He was, because at the end of this episode, Nathan, as an infant, gets infected with a techno-organic virus. And they have to send him to the future with Bishop so that they can go and cure it. And that causes the conflict because, Scott was abandoned by his dad, and he's like, I don't want any part of this. I don't want to abandon my son. And they're like, well, he'll die. We don't have the technology to cure his illness. So, but he just kind of washes his hands of it and walks away when he's like, I'm not going to abandon my kid. And then he literally walks out of the room to abandon his kid right as they're about to send the kid to the future. So that one felt a little tonally weird, but I can understand him going through those feelings. Moral of the story, your wife is a clone. Well, and I felt like they didn't do enough. They kind of glossed over it, because eventually Jean is able to reach Madeline, like she's able to use her psychic powers to get Madeline to recognize her love for her son, and that overrides Mr. Sinister's will. But then, even then, like, Madeline just goes off to become her own person and leaves her baby with Jean. So, what was the point of pulling on her emotions like that if she wasn't even going to stick around to be the mom to her own dang kid? Eddie Spencer said Spider-Man Animated had one of the best intros. It was pretty good, but it is not as good as X-Men's intro. And this show keeps that intro basically as one-to-one as possible. I don't know what's going to happen next week, but so far it seems like a lot of fun. They've sent Nathan to the future with Bishop, so they might bring Cable back again. But like, I think Cable showed up in the 90s cartoon. It's been a while since I watched that show, and I don't know that I've seen every episode of the original 90s X-Men. Maybe they'll address it, maybe they won't. We'll see. Hey, thanks for watching. Your view means a lot. Don't forget to toss me a like and subscribe and ring the bell. And drop a comment below telling me what you thought of the video. I stream Mondays and Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific, so catch me live and join in on the convo. You can find all my socials in the description below, and thank you to all my patrons with a very special shout out to my Whale Shark tier patrons Ryan D and James Knight, and my Anemone Friend tier patron Piftle Cakes. Your support means the world. Catch you next time.